Hello and welcome to another SvelteKit tutorial, and this time I wanted to show you how we can do authentication and authorization, and we also do it this time with SQLite. So we create this small login screen and we can register a new user, and we're logged in as this new user, and we can also log in as existing users. So let's do not admin and not they is big. And this user, for example, sees nothing here on the page, so he's not authorized to do any changes to the data. And we have an admin user called Philip, and log him in, and he actually sees the section and he is actually allowed to do an update. Great. So we use SQLite to store our data. So as you can see here, I have this table, users table, and we store the password hashed, so it's not plain text with bcrypt. And here are the roles. And I will, if you like to know how it's basically done in SvelteKit, make sure to follow this tutorial. But I want to mention that storing user data in yourself, basically in this table or anywhere, is a thing you might not want to do in a big production app. The less data you store, the less can be stolen, or the less problem you can get. So maybe you can also instead do social auth or something, so that you don't have to store password fields. So it's a decision you have to make, but if you want to find out how it's done, have fun with this tutorial. So we first want to start off with creating a login page, and before we do that, I think we should add a little header up here so we can link to it. And for that, we go back to our code. And it's a header, so it should sit on every page of the whole app. So I'm gonna create a global layout in the routes folder, so it gets applied to every page. And again, like in the SQLite tutorial, I use Balmer for CSS. So I have some classes here from Balmer that automatically style our header. And what I basically did here is create a small text. The brand is just a text, SvelteKit plus SQLite. Then I have a link to the home page, and on the right side I have a button that says login. Okay, get an error. Yeah, okay, so it already says, we don't know where the login site is. I haven't created that yet, but let's take a look at the header. So here it is. And again, we have this home section and here this login button, and currently the login page is not existing. So let's go to our routes. We have to create a new folder called login, and here we can create a page.svelte. And in that, we're gonna I'm gonna copy again small HTML markup, and what this is a small form, and we have basically two inputs, username and password, and two buttons, register or login. So I do this on the same page in a production app. You maybe want to make a different screen and also add email or something, but for this demo I'm gonna share the login and register screen. So let's move on with actually doing the register part here. And for that, I have created a users table in SQLite. So it has a username, password, created at timestamp, and some roles. So we can say this user is an admin, this user is maybe a normal user, and differentiate what he can see and what he can do. And so let's go and do our insert function, so we can actually write to this user table. And yeah, so let's go ahead and we're here on our login page. So let's first add to this input. I forgot to add names to it so we can receive the values from our form. So name is username and password. And let's also say both are required. So let's take what HTML or your browser has to offer to automatically check that it should be filled. So let's start off and go to our database file. So in lib server database index. Here let's add a small function, and I prepared something for that. And let's see what this does. So we get username and password, and it's just a simple insert. And I'm gonna insert both values, and for roles for now I simply insert a string of 2 roles. And yeah, in real case scenario, you might want to normalize this and create a subtable where you assign each role to this user. I just concatenated it with a colon, and also it's not dynamic. It's actually always the same for every user for now. And I just run this. So let's implement it, and let's go to our login and create a page.server.ts. And in there we can export const actions actions, and let's do the register part, async request. Great. So let's get our form data. So that's 2 inputs we named. And I also added the requirement stuff, but we always have to do the checks on the server also. So you can't trust the front end. The user could go into the browser DevTools and remove the required. So we also check if all inputs are filled in here. And if not, we can then return with the SvelteKit fail function. And this is great because we can actually add an error message here and input something in here. Let's test this. I think it can't do it. Can I do something like this? Yeah. So let's go into our thing and leave this blank. I think, yeah, I have this required, but I can quickly, as I said, I can remove it. Where is it? Required. It's not required anymore. And now I haven't actually, yeah, I get this bad request, but I still need to display the message actually. So let's go here and let's say script lang equals ts. We want that typing, and we can export let form, and we get our action data in here beautifully typed. And what we can do now here is if form dot error, thanks Copilot, but it's error message. We can what's that? Yeah, okay, so we can display the message if there is one. Let's go back to our page and check again. Okay, it's here. This is not working. It has text danger. So Copilot mixed up some other CSS frameworks, I guess. So now we get our error message. Great. Okay, so we now display the error. So let's actually call the function in here. So if the username and password is there, we need to call create user and pass username and password. And let's see if it works. So let's say test 1.23, 123, register. And so let's look into our database. If we go to this user file table, this is actually Beekeeper Studio. It's a free tool where you can show your databases. And we can see here we have the password in here. So what we did now is we inserted the plain text of the password. So it's the admin can go ahead and see every password of each user, and that's really bad. We should hash our password inputs. And we can do that with the node module. So let's go back to our code. And we install bcrypt. That's a library to hash your passwords. And we can also add the types because it hasn't any types in itself, so we need to install types bcrypt also. And start our server again. Great. So let's go in here, and this is our function, our create function, and we want to hash the password in here. So let's go ahead and const hashed password is equals to bcrypt. Can I import it? Okay, import bcrypt from bcrypt. Thank you. bcrypt.hash. We say password, and this is salt routes, and it's basically the complexity, how long the computation works to hash this password. And if you upper it, for example 12, it takes longer to process this, but this is also more secure because the user cannot you have to basically brute force. If you want to brute force the password hash, it takes longer to resolve. So you make it secure by slowing it down, basically. But this is also asynchronous, so this returns a promise. We don't want to block off our JavaScript thread, so let's do it asynchronous. So we get that, and we want to insert that. Okay, create user. Great, so we go back to our page and hashed user 123 again, register, and let's look into our database, refresh. And what you can see now, sorry, it's really small, so I copy it out. This is the hash. It's really complex, and basically if we wouldn't know the initial password, we can't figure out what the actual password is. So we have no knowledge of, or the database has no knowledge of the real password. It only stores a hashed value. So let's move on with implementing our login routine. So let's go again back to our code, and I think I may made an error here. Yeah, look here, I have these two buttons, but I actually have the same action. So I'm going to change this to login. And yeah, okay, great. So let's move on to our database function that actually implements the login. And for that, I prepared something again. So it almost looks the same as this above, but again, we query first for our user with the same username. And if we don't get any row, so maybe the username is wrong, we plainly return false. And if there is a row, we must use this bcrypt compare function, and we pass the password from the input and the password from the queried row, and this tells us if actually the password matches the hash. Yeah. So we can go to our server file, and here can do the login function. Again, we get our form data. Again, we check if everything is filled. And what we can do here is then call our function, how did I name it? Check user credentials. And we get a result. And if this is false, we return fail, invalid username or password, and otherwise we do nothing. So let's test this out. Go to our login page. I first create a new user because I forgot already the credentials, so make it easy. Philip, register, and let's do Philip1 and login. And it worked. Why did it work? So I found my bug. It was really stupid. Of course, here this check user credentials function returns a promise, so we have to wait it. And yeah, I was basically logging this result, saw that it's a promise, so this doesn't work. This isn't resolved yet, so we can remove that again. And if we go back to our page, let's say again, one password, login, invalid username or password. If I put the correct stuff in here, we get nothing. And if I put a different username that doesn't even exist, we also get invalid username or password. But see how the timing is different. So this takes a few or maybe a second to load, and this hand stuff comes back basically immediately. And this is because we, in here, we only check the database. We find no one called Hans, skip this part, and directly return false. Where in here, if we find a row, we do this compare operation, which again takes some time. So this is not as good because we don't want to give the users any information if a username exists or not. And to obfuscate this information, we can just do basically a hash operation. We do nothing with it, we just await it. And by that, wait a few moments to return the false, so we don't know if the username actually exists. So if I go here, it now also takes a few seconds. So we actually don't know if a user is existing or not. So we just waste our CPU resources to don't tell the users if, or they can't find out if username actually exists in the database. So for now, the login button only checks if the username password do match, but we don't actually get logged in. So to do this gets now a little bit more interesting. We need to do a lot of stuff. So we go back to our code, and we should start off. We go to our login server function, and let's create a new function in here that actually performs a login. Function perform login. So we do this in a very basic way. We set a cookie on the page, and we get the cookie here in this login sections as a parameter, cookies. And that's what we're going to also pass into this function. So cookies of the type cookies. And also we want to get the username. So the thing is, the thing in the cookie will not be the username, because then you can just go ahead and change it or put your own thing in there. You want to make a session ID, and that's what we need to generate. But first let's do the cookies part. Cookies.set, we name this SID for session ID, and we would then put something random in here. Sorry. And we also set max age. So a session runs out in maybe 30 days. So this part needs to be a random session ID. So we must generate one. So let's create a create session function and username, and we also pass max age. And this create session function, we need to create a store, a server-side store, where we cache all the sessions that are valid, and so we can access, we get the session cookie from the user, and we can look into there, okay, which user this session belongs to, and we can maybe show his name in the title or something. You see a lot of times that sessions can also be stored in the database or in a different memory database like Redis. And because I want to keep it really simple, I just do a JavaScript in memory store here. I go to lib server, so it should be definitely server because there's session IDs should not be public. So we call it session store and create a new file in there, index.ts. So this file gets a little bit more complicated. So we first want to create a function that we already called here, create session, and we first want to generate the session ID. We can generate it easily with Node crypto. So let's create another function for that, get session ID, and we can import random bytes from the crypto package. Import. I'd also like to prefix the internal Node packages with Node. So we return random bytes, 32 to string hex, and then we get just some random characters and numbers. So we have this get session ID. And the sessions itself we want to store in a map. So we can go here and say const session store equals new map. And we also want to type it, so the session will have the username, the roles of a user, and also we say that the session is only valid 30 days, so we also store when it's invalid. And we can then map our type our map. So key is string, that's the session ID, and the value is the session info. Great. And I could also do this type session ID is string, and we could say this is this, so this maybe makes more sense. Or it's easier to read. And we could just now use this function to generate, but there is a small certain possibility that we could, it's not realistic, but there could be a possibility that we generate a session that's already there. So let's do a do while. So if we actually, this 1 in a trillion possibility occurs, we just generate another one. And we also need the roles. For that we need a new database function. Just quickly copy it over. So get user roles, we pass in the username, select the roles, and if we found something, we split them by the colon. Remember, we store them colon separated. And so we go back to our file and we can then get the roles. Get user roles, pass username. Great. And then we can set actually the value in our store. So yeah, in the map we have functions like has or set, and we set this by the key session ID, and we put this in here, username, roles, and invalid add. We get this max number, so that's basically in 30 days, so it's a number of milliseconds, and we have to add them to the current date. And at the end return the session ID, and we also, so we now store them with the invalidation date that we actually need to clean that up at some point. So let's not do it every time. We maybe add let next clean is date dot now plus 1 hour. Yeah, that's okay. And we also do a function clean, and in there we get the current date, and we loop through every value in the map, and if there is something that's where the invalid add is smaller than now, we delete that, and we set the next clean again to 1 hour. And yeah, okay, so if date, yeah, okay, we need to actually call this cleanup function, and we do that if date now next clean, but I also like to put it in a small timeout, so it runs basically after we return this thing. So yeah, this is our create session function. So what we do, we generate a session ID, we get the user roles, we put all that together, username, roles, and invalid add, and put it into our session map. We can later access, and if we need to, we do the cleanup, and in the end return the session ID. Great. And let's go back so we can import that. So we now get our session ID here, and we're gonna use it to set the cookie. So let's check this out. So we have this perform login now. So after we check this is true. So this is the part that runs if the error, if the username and password do not match. So we only do it if they match. So we perform login cookies username. We can also do it directly after registering a user. So we need to do it here. Okay, so let's test this out. Go back to our login screen, and I'm going to, yeah, okay, this is from testing. I'm going to delete this stuff here. So we now have no cookie. And if I go here, Philip, and I do something wrong, we get nothing here and the error message. Great. If I put Philip in here and again as password, you can actually see here we have a cookie. Well, actually, I think I did something wrong with the max age stuff. It says 2024. I don't care. So this is our session ID. Here it's more readable. And yeah, so basically this cookie now gets sent to our Svelte server every time we visit a page. So if I go to the home page, it's still always sent to the server. And what we can do now is retrieve it every time. that we want to check this. So every page load, we can retrieve it, and so we can exit it everywhere we want. So for that, Svelte has a cool function called hooks, and we can do that in the source directory here. So not in raw, it's really in the source. We can create a function called hooks.server.ts, and in there we're going to create a new function called handle, and it looks like this. Satisfies handle. And what we can do here is we get the cookies from our event. So in here are the cookies that are set before. And we named our cookie as ID, so we can retrieve it like that. If a session exists, we can get the session info. Okay, that's another function we actually need to create first. So we go back to our session store. We have this create session function. We do a export function get session. And okay, let's first check if it's valid. Const session equals session.get. If session, we could also extend the invalid. That's what's proposing here. For this I won't do that, but we can check if date.now cursor invalid. We delete it, otherwise we return session. So we only return something if it's not invalid, and else we return undefined. Great. So we can use this get session function here. And what we can do with this information, we first have to check again if it's actually returned something. We can then go to event.locals, and in there we can put something we like. For example, here session.username and roles equals session.roles. So in this stuff, this local stuff, we can fetch from basically any functions we want. So in any server TS, for example, we can access them. And so we don't have to do this get session stuff everywhere we want to exit it. We basically attach to the request in the server. As you can see here, TypeScript doesn't like locals.username and roles. We have to manually add it to this app.dts file. So here we have interface, namespace app, and this interface locals that's currently commented out, and we can add username and roles, and now TypeScript likes this. And in the end, this handle function actually need to return something. So a response that's later gets passed on to the other functions, for example, our login or our server functions. And we get this response by resolve event. Event is where we pass this local variable to, and we just return it. So basically, Svelte runs this function now on every request, and what we do is we check if the user has a session cookie, and if so, we're gonna get the session data and put on our server side to the request, we put the username and the roles. Great. So now we want to do something with it. We go to our layout page. It would be cool if we are logged in, we see not this login button, but instead we see maybe hello and a logout button. So what we can do here is we can make a plus layout.server.ts. So that runs for the layout. And in there, we create a load function, and this time is it satisfies server load. And from there we can use the locals, as I already imported them here, and we can get the username, locals, and we can then in the end return them as a data point, like we do with every load function as a page server TS. So we go to our layout file, and in there we can make a script, and this time the type is layout server data, and we can export the data from there. So we get our username, and in here we have this ahref login button. We can check if data.username. We don't want to put it here. We only want to show it if the user is currently not logged in. And we can say here another link to Logout, and we'll say hello data.username and then Logout. And if we look at our page here, we are currently not logged in. Okay, so this didn't work. So what do we, it's username. Okay, let's log here something, console.log sid, console.log session. Load this again. Okay, so we have session ID, we have not session. Okay. We first need to delete this cookie again and log in again. So we actually create the entry in our session store. So because we added the create session function after we logged in, we need to of course log in again. So I go to Philip, log in, and this still didn't work. So I found the problem, it wasn't actually a bug, it was just that the header here didn't refresh. So if I show you, I type in the credentials and I log in, it's still not here, I get the session cookie. So if I refresh, I now actually get the correct header I wanted. Let's go back and fix this. We could invalidate any cache, but I think the easiest thing and also the thing you should do is redirect after the login. So I think it's normal behavior on many websites. After a login, you get to the home page. You don't need to be at the login screen anymore. So just edit these two rows and no. And just wanted to log in again, and we get here, I didn't actually delete the cookie first, so delete that, log in, and again Philip, log in, and voila, Chrome says it's a bad password, but I don't care. And we are here on the home page, and we can see here, hello Philip, logout. So this is how we used the hooks to set the locals, and we can use the locals in the layout server file or any load file and get the data from there. So let's start implementing our logout routine. So currently we haven't defined anything. So let's go to our code. One second, where is it? Here. So routes, we had a new folder called Logout, and we're gonna do a page file only. So we want to don't show any HTML stuff, we only want to use a function here. And so we make our load function. Page server load. We want to get the cookie. So again, we check if we have a cookie, or we first get the SID stuff, and if we have something, we can then go ahead and say cookies.delete. And what we also want, we want to clean up our session store. So we add a small delete session function and delete it. And we can go ahead and call it also after deleting the cookie and import it first. And again, we want to redirect to the home page. Or maybe login page. I go home page. You can decide for yourself what you want. So 303 and slash. And this should be already it for logging the user out. So logged in. Login. Okay, great. And so see on the right side, I have a cookie here. I'm logged in. If I go above this, I haven't clicked it. You can see it's already gone. And that's a thing Svelte does. And that makes most things better because it preloads the data before you actually click on it. But in this case, it's quite not what you want. So we want to disable that. And we can do that by simply adding an HTML attribute to the A. So data SvelteKit preload data off. And what we also want is we want a reload. So if we redirect to the home page, and if we're already on the home page, it doesn't actually do the redirect because it's you're already there. And then it again doesn't update the layout on the top where it says hello, you're logged in. And if we put this reload here, it really does a reload, and we get to refresh the thing. So now we check it again, log in, and we're here. And if I now hover over this, we don't get immediately logged out. And if we click here, boom, we are logged out, our cookie is gone, and we have the login screen again. Great. So let's start using the roles we implemented in the users table. And as you can see here, I have this album, and what I can do here is update the album. And also, and I want to let only users do this with admin privilege. So I'm going to log in, click login, and actually create a not admin user. Register him, not admin, and let's go to our database file, check our users, and let's manually remove this admin thing here. Apply, so he's only moderator for now, and we need to actually log him out and log him in again because this stuff only loads if we create a session. So now it should be loaded. And we go to our album page here. At first, let's throw an error if the update album thing is called, and the user isn't actually an admin. So for that, we again, like we did before, can import this local stuff, and if the user doesn't have in his roles the admin thing, we throw an error and say you are unauthorized. And let's do that. So let's go here and say we want to update this. Oh god, it worked. I hadn't saved it. Oh my god. I hadn't saved the file. Yeah, okay, great. Now we get to this page. Actually, there's an error page, so we get this thing, and we get the unauthorized stuff. So again, this is no without the 1, 2, 3. Let's add it, and we get the error page. Great. Okay. Great. Fine. But again, we need to do this on the server. Definitely always check everything on the server function. What we can also do is hide this region on the client. So we go to our load function and let's put a value for is admin out is admin locals roles includes admin, and again we need to import the locals. Great. And we go to our page. We just wrap this whole thing in if data.isAdmin /if. Great. And we now should not be able to see this region. Good. And let's double check if we log in as Philip, that is an admin. We go to the page. Chrome. And we get a section and we can actually update the album. Perfect. So we now have a working authorization and authentication for SvelteKit app. And let's also check if we log out, we also don't get to see this region. So yeah, that's it for the small authentication and authorization tutorial within own implementation. Again, remember, if you have a huge production app, I really don't recommend storing your username and password in your tables like we do here. The less data you create, the less problems you get. Maybe use Google login or other social logins. But I hope you learned something, and if you like this video or have any feedback, make sure to let me know in the comments. Thanks for tuning in and have a great day. Bye.